Hi, I'm Brian English, forum name Hyperbytes, and welcome to Unit 5 of my OneSignal integration unit. In this unit we're going to be looking at email notifications. Before we can actually do that within Wappler, there is a little bit of setup that we'll need to do within OneSignal itself. So let's just switch over to OneSignal and have a look at this configuration requirement. So here we are, we're in a OneSignal account. I'm going to go into the app that I'm using. I'm going to go into the quick start guide, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into set up message channels for your app, and in this case I'm going to pick email. Now there are a number of different options for doing the email. You can integrate it with another provider, as in basically if you pick OneSignal, you're talking about using your own email or registering with them. You've got SendGrid, Mailgun and MailChimp. This is well documented by OneSignal, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up here and do email setup documentation, and I'm going to run through how you would set up your own domain to use OneSignal notification by email. So here we're in the email setup, and this basically will just explain to you what you need to do. They say you have to purchase a sending domain through OneSignal, or you can auto configure your own domain, and to do this you have to set a number of DNS records. As you go through the process, OneSignal will give you those settings. So in this case, for the example, they've got mail.onesignaldemo.com. Bearing in mind that these are primarily for you, I would imagine, used as a sending box rather than the receiving box. You could use perhaps email, admin, whatever. But basically it gives you a number of additional DNS records that you need to add. Obviously, in this case, the domain it's sending from is mail. So all of these settings show mail. If you were to use something different, let's say no reply or whatever, then obviously each of these settings here would need to be amended to show that as well. So it's fairly straightforward. You configure your DNS, give it a little bit of time obviously to replicate, because the next thing you need to do is to verify your account. Now to verify your account, basically this is OneSignal's way, I suspect, of making sure that these aren't used by spammers. So you have to click on your verify account button after you've added your email details, and they will ask you a number of questions. They'll ask you about what you're going to use the email sending for, number of people that they are likely to be sending it to allow them for load balancing, etc. And when you've completed all of that, and provided that they can verify that your DNS settings have been set up properly, which obviously means that you've got to leave a little bit of a lag here, you will get the authorization, that account will be verified, and you will be able to start using it as your out email for sending emails via OneSignal. So before we jump back into Wappler to do this, I just want to talk you through how subscription IDs work very briefly. I've got here our application open. It is subscriptions, and I've selected a subscription. You'll see here there is an entry called external ID. And that's very important, because if you think about it, a user could have a subscription for push messages, they could have a subscription for email, they could have a subscription for SMS, and several other things that I'm not even going to bother to list. And of course, all of those subscription IDs will be different, and that can cause problems. And OneSignal has no easy way of normalizing them. And the way it does that is it does it through an external ID. So what we do is we actually set an external ID for that user, and then OneSignal itself will then normalize all of the accounts that are using the same external ID. So before we actually start to add our email settings into Wappler, we also need to be able to add an external ID. So I'm just going to copy that subscription ID because I'm going to need that, and then now I'm going to pop back into Wappler, and the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to add an external ID to our subscription. Okay, so let's create an API action. We'll call it create external ID. Buy in. That'll do. We're now going to actually do it from here. There's a bug in there doing it that way at the moment. So we want to find create an alias by subscription. We'll add that to our list. I still should have that app ID that we had before in, a subscription ID that we had in before. I'll select my app ID as normal. Let's get rid of that first. Right, so alias label, I'm just going to stick with the norm, shall we say, within OneSignal, and I'm going to give me, in this case, an alias just of Brian. Let's save that. I'm now going to fire that up in a browser. It's actually opened up off screen, but I can show you it has run. And now if I go into OneSignal, go into those subscriptions, subscription profile, there we are. We'll now see that we have an external ID of Brian, and we can use that external ID now to be able to add further subscriptions to that individual account. So let's have a look at that now. Okay, so I'm going to create new action, add API action. I'll call that email subscribe. Let's drop down here and let's create subscription. We know our app ID, that's no problem. And now alias label is external ID, and the alias ID was Brian. I want to subscribe to email. For an email, the token is the email address that you will be using. So I'll just put in brian@hyperbytes.co.uk. I want to enable that subscription. Might as well click output while we're busy and save that. And that would be our email subscribe routine. Now, I'm just going to quickly try that, but I don't think this will work because don't actually have this account set up fully as in the email subscription. So let's have a look. It actually has given me a status 200, so maybe that did work as I wanted. Let's have a look at our subscriptions. And yeah, it's worked beautifully. There we are. Now we'll see that Brian at Hyperbytes is in fact subscribed for email to that account. And you'll see also that OneSignal, because we've done this via our ID, has given them both the same OneSignal ID. So all we need to do now is to actually send our first email. Okay, I'm back in Wappler. I've actually switched projects. I'm now in my development project, just simply because everything that I need is set up properly in there. in relation to email integration, etc. So I already had an email push action that I'd used for testing purposes. I've added the OneSignal email push, and if we look at the content of that now, you can see you pick your app, as we do in pretty well every action. You can give it an external name so you can recognize that recognize it out externally. Give it a subject, give it a body. Obviously, we'd normally be pulling these, I would imagine, from something like a summer note based post as opposed to hard coding it, but it's easier just to hard code it for demo purposes. The email from name and the email from address. You can add an optional reply address in there. There is also no email pre-header option. I'll let you look that up because it's a little bit fiddly. You can attach it to a template if you wish. In this case, I'm going to send this to all email subscriptions. Filters, we're going to deal with filters later. Aliases, you can include a list of aliases there if you want. That will only include subscribed users. You can actually tell it to include unsubscribed users as well. And email tokens. So again, if you want to know all about that, just click on this link down here. But I'm just going to make sure that's saved. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to send me, hopefully, a email as the only subscriber, obviously, direct from Wappler there. So let's give it a try and let's see what happens. Firstly, pleased to say we seem to have a success message. It's given the notification an ID. It hasn't given it an external ID as such. So if I now look in our on my email, I should be able to see that email is there ready and waiting. So there we are. Wow, it's worked. There's email message from Planet Hypebytes to myself. Hi, it's me. And that's our first OneSignal email notification complete. So we'll be looking at SMS notifications next. Thanks for joining me, and hope you'll join me next time.